church as being one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. And in the middle of the section on holiness, I raised just that objection. And I raised the very things you did. And I brought forward the things that John Paul II apologized for, namely Inquisition crusades. I bring up to date the sex abuse scandal. And I made that point, going back to Paul, we hold the treasure in earthen vessels. So the bearer of the great message of Christ is flawed and fragile. It's all of us, you know. And that my basic insight is that human beings tend to go bad. That's our doctrine of original sin. We're a bad lot. We are. Chesterton said we're all in the same boat and we're all seasick, you know. But that's Catholic doctrine, that we expect people to go bad. And so I think it's wrong for us to, you know, wring our hands over all the terrible things that have happened. Heck, in a 2,000-year tradition, that you're going to find bad behavior by human beings? Duh. I mean, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Of course you would. So I think to acknowledge that fully, and then to say, but the church is not thereby compromised. You know, that the treasure of the church, Christ, is in its sacraments, especially the Eucharist. It's in its saints. It's in the great art and architecture. It's in the sacraments. It's in our apostolic governance, etc. That's where the treasure is. It's in earthen vessels, of course. And so all those things. So I did that. One thing I didn't do in the series, though, honestly, is to dwell on the hot-button issues. You know, gay marriage and divorce and birth control and everything. And here's why. And one of the talks coming up later in this process, I'll say it in more detail, but here's why. I don't think that's the best way to evangelize, is to start with those issues. I think you start with the beauty of the faith. You start with the drama and the excitement of it. You start with Jesus Christ, risen from the dead, and what that means, you know. Now, when you draw people into Christ, into his mystical body, the church, and you call them to be saints, then you want to hear what it's like to be holy. Just like a kid, you don't know baseball, what, cricket or what do you, Aussie rules, football or rugby, right? This won't work because it's a baseball analogy, but in baseball, American baseball, there's a rule called the infield fly rule, and it's real complex. It's something I'm sure like in rugby. It's like a little kind of complex, quirky law. That's a good law, by the way, and it really helps the game of baseball. But if you're going to bring a kid, like, I want to teach you baseball, what don't you do? You don't. Let me explain the infield fly rule to you first. No, you show them a baseball game and you show them the great players and look at how he swings and look at that. You know, or you want to teach a kid how to play golf. You don't begin with, rule 45.9 in the rule book. You begin with the glory of the game, right? Then, and you know this is true, when you're into golf or you're into baseball, you're into rugby, by God, you want to know the rules. You love the rules because they make the game more alive, you know? They make it more logical. They make it more competitive or whatever. So that's where I would fit in things like birth control and divorce and remarriage and the whole range of sexual teachings. Well, that's a program for saints. What I mean is people that really want to know what it's like to live the life, of Christ at the full pitch. Good. So we'll get there. But I don't think you start there. My generation, again, I'll badmouth the way I was trained because I think it was a bad thing. We got all caught up in this thing. The church I grew up in was a church bickering with itself about sex and authority. You know what that was? Disedifying. Who was attracted to that? Catholics bickering about birth control. I mean, who's attracted to that? And I'm not saying they're bad people or that's a bad thing to bicker about. I'm just saying it's what you don't lead with. I think you draw people in and then you say, well, look, if you want to live this thing in its fullest pitch, let me show you. So that's one reason I didn't in this series dwell on the hot button issues.